Hello all, good evening or good morning or good afternoon in whichever part of the world you are. Welcome to the 7th edition of the Urban Lens Film Festival. We've gone online this year because of COVID-19, but there is no reason for us not to congregate online and watch films and have conversations with film practitioners. And today, we're here today to speak on the many cinemas of Northeast India, which is a panel discussion which is under the aegis of something that we call on practice. And I'm just going to very briefly speak about what this idea of on practice is. Since the Urban Lens Film Festival began in 2013, we are a non-funded, non-competitive film festival. We felt that it's important to keep a conversation with film practitioners, to have it with them, because I think what happens very often is filmmakers make the film, which is great, and then film critics or academics write about it, which is also great. We want them to. But something we feel very strongly about Urban Lens is there's an impulse with which filmmakers create the work, right? And it would be interesting to get them to reflect upon their own practice and also other kinds of influences that leads them to make the films that they do, because an idea is rooted, the kernel of an idea is rooted in something, but there are many influences which also make you do the work you do. So we have this session. I mean, over the years, we've spoken to different kinds of film practitioners, whether they're directors or camera people or editors, to get them to talk about what is actually the nuts and bolts of the work they do, and how does somebody who's outside the film world actually understand what the process is. So the many cinemas of Northeast India is part of the on practice panel. And Namrata Joshi, who's the moderator of this panel, will of course speak much more about the context of this panel and why we're doing what we're doing today. But the thing is, I think very often we use the term Northeast, very often in a throwabout way, and it's used as a very generic term to place a region or speak about a region which actually has a very complex history, context, politics. First of all, the Northeast is seven different states. And within the state, each region, each town, city has its own contestations or cultural kind of way of expression. And we felt that it might be interesting to bring film practitioners from the region, whose work is, whose narrative forms and work to some extent is grounded in the place they come from, but also not. So we thought it might be interesting to bring them, get them to reflect about their own work and other kinds of work and cinema itself, and how do they look at it. So we have 5 filmmakers in the panel today who come from various kinds of forms of narrative practice and storytelling and genre. And I would say personally, for me, many of them, I would not define their work that they're documentary filmmakers or fiction filmmakers. And anyway, those divisions are, constantly blend into each other. So I will do a quick introduction to them, and then Namrata will take over from me. So Bhaskar Hazarika is one of the people who's on the panel today. He's from Assam, India, and has over 18 years of experience working in film, television, and internet industries. He holds an MA in film and drama from the University of Reading and a BA honors in history from Delhi University, and works out of Delhi, Bombay, and Assam. He's also the founder of Metanormal, an independent film studio developing fresh content from the Northeast of India, as well as turnkey audiovisual assignments for clients in the government and development sectors. Bhaskar is presently writing series for an Indian OTT platform and working with a major Bollywood producer on the development of his first Hindi language feature film. All the best, Bhaskar. I'd love to watch this film. Pavan Kumar studied filmmaking. Pavan is the next person who's on the panel. Studied filmmaking from SRFTI Kolkata. He's best known for his documentary film Apspa 1958. Those of you who haven't watched it, I would really urge you to go watch it today, which won several awards from the Fipresky Prize at the 9th MIF 2006 and the Golden Lotus for the Best Non-Feature Film at the 56th National Film Awards 2008. His other notable films are A Cry in the Dark, The First Sleep, Mr. India, Ruptured Spring, and Floating Life. Her debut feature film, Loktak Lairembe, I apologize, I have killed the pronunciation, really apologies. The English translation of it is Lady of the Lake, was screened at the 67th Berlin Film Festival 2017. So far, the film has won around 18 awards, including the National Award for the Best Environmental Film, 64th National Awards 2016, Best Feature Film, 18th Mumbai Film Festival, and Special Mention, and the 11th Asia Pacific Screen Awards, Brisbane. We're also joined in the panel by Rajni Basumantri, who's a filmmaker who writes her scripts and produces them. Along the journey, her talent as an actress has come to the fore as well. She belongs to the Bodo community in the state of Assam in Northeast India. She strongly believes that culture and creativity can engender social change in communities. Rajni wrote, directed, and co-produced a highly acclaimed feature film, Rag, the Rhythm of Love, in 2014. Her first film as a scriptwriter and producer, Anurag had received several Assam State Awards in 2007. In the 2019 film, Jalai, translated in English, The Seed, has been written, directed, and produced by her. She was also the lead protagonist in the film. Rajni's recent acting experience in successful Indian films include roles in Mary Kom, Shawkeens, and Three Smoking Barrels. She's been active in cultural fields since her school days and has been involved in various pro-humanitarian projects among victims of ethnic violence and natural calamities, primarily in Assam and Kashmir. The fourth person in this panel is Van Frank. Van Frank is also somebody whose film we've screened earlier at the Urban Lens Film Festival. So welcome once again, Van Frank, but this time in a very different way. Is an independent filmmaker and founder of Red Door, a production space for films and music. In 2009, he was awarded the Public Arts Grant from the Foundation of Indian Contemporary Arts for his installation, Kali Kamai. The installation was a semi-finalist at the International Art Award for Public Arts in the Middle Eastern and Southeast Asian region. In 2011, his debut short film, 1987, bagged the awards at the GISFF Film Festival. In 2013, he was awarded the Early Career Film Fellowship from TISS, Mumbai, for his documentary proposal, Where the Clouds End, a documentary about tribal identity and border politics. The film premiered at the United Nations World Forum, Medellin, Colombia. In 2015, he directed Between the Forest and the Song, a film that explores the song naming tradition in the Konthong village and the implications of modernity in tribal spaces. In 2017, he released Because We Did Not Choose, a film on the participation of tribal labor in the First World War. Van Frank also co-wrote and edited My Name is Eo. The film was awarded the prestigious Intangible Culture Prize at the Royal Anthropological Institute's Ethnographic Film Festival, UK, and Best Film at the Film Festival de la Lesinia in 2017. When not making films, Van Frank writes poetry and produces music. The fifth member of the panel is Yapang Naro Longkumar, who we also call Naro. Hi, Naro. Nice to see you. He's a graduate from Mass Communication Research Center, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. She's worked in NDTV and the Mass Communication Center, Nagaland University, after which she has ventured to make documentaries on her own. Having returned to her home state of Nagaland, she hopes to make documentaries that paint a wide canvas of her people. With a film culture that is very nascent in Nagaland, the filmmaker feels privileged to tell stories of a state that is very often overlooked. And last but never the least, the moderator of this panel, who I think all of you know, but I'm still going to introduce her, is Namrata Joshi, who's a film critic. I'm sure you read her columns all the time. She's an independent journalist and film critic, currently writing for The Wire and Newsclick. Her earlier stints have been at The Hindu, Mumbai, Outlook News Magazine, India Today, and The Economic Times. She's the winner of India's National Award for Best Film Critic for 2004. She came out with her first book, Real India, Cinema Off the Beaten Track, in which she journeyed through the interiors of the country, intimately chronicling little-known accounts about the nation's incessant obsession with the movies. It was published by Hachette in July 2019. A member of FIPRESCI, the International Federation of Film Critics based in Munich, she's been a member of the FIPRESCI critics juries at the international film festivals in Toronto, Cluj, Cairo, Moscow, Trivandrum, and Aurangabad. She's been on selection committees for films at the International Film Festival of India, Goa, and on the juries of Geomami, Mumbai, IDSSFK, Kerala, and New York Indian Film Festival. She won the Charles Wallace India Trust Iqbal Sareen Memorial Fellowship in 2004, as part of which she was associated with the Department of Journalism, Media and Cultural Studies, Cardiff University, to pursue independent research on the project, the changing themes and concerns of the British South Asian diaspora cinema. She's also been winner of the British Chevening Scholarship for Indian Journalists in 1999. Thank you, Namrata, for so readily agreeing to be in conversation with all the wonderful filmmakers and moderating this panel. It's no mean feat because the filmmakers come from different places and different formal practices. So thanks. And I forgot to mention in the beginning, welcome also to viewers who are not just here on Zoom, but on the IIHS Facebook page and YouTube. Over to you, Namrata.
Thank you so much, Subhashri. It's indeed my privilege and pleasure to be moderating this particular panel with, a whole bunch of filmmakers who I've known personally, professionally, and whose work I have really admired over the years of having watched them. So thanks a lot to you and to the Indian Institute of Human Settlements and to the panelists as well and all the attendees. I hope we make it a fruitful and interesting conversation. Just to put things in perspective, what Subhashri was talking about when she and I started discussing the nitty-gritty, so to speak, of this particular panel, what struck me and struck her was both of us felt that when we use the term the Northeast, it becomes a convenient word, if I may put it, for the lack of a better qualifier, to kind of club together not just an entire, an entire region, and as well as the cinema coming from there, creates a certain kind of monolith, whereas what we know of the region and its cinema is that there is the key underlying factor would be what I would call diversity, whether it is geographic, whether it is linguistic, whether it is cultural, whether it is technical, whether it's form, whether it's content. So I think what's going to be of interest for me, and I'm sure for the viewers as well, is to go a little deeper into the work of each one of you and kind of see your journey and try to see how you've negotiated the specifics with the universal, so to speak, specifics which are rooted in the space and in the place and in the region and in the context that you're rooted in, to a more generalized universal world, a more universal landscape of cinema. And what I've been struck is that in each of your cases there has been a movement, there is a consistency, and yet there is a movement which seems to have broken expectations from you as well, that a viewer would have, and I think that's how the diversity comes to reflect in the kind of cinema that one has seen from you, whether it is the content, form, genre. I would begin with Bhaskar because he's in a big hurry also. Beginning with Bhaskar, your journey, if one were to look at TV, mainstream cinema as well, and then Kothanodi, followed by Amis, which kind of went into a more urban zone, but all about, stories which somehow seemed rooted in the identity. Was it in any way a reclaiming of the identity? I mean, you worked in various projects, but when it came to making your own film, was there some urgent need within that made you go back to, where you, for the lack of a better word, belong?
Thank you. I hope I'm suitably audible. First of all, thank you, Subhashri and team, for having me over. And thank you to all the attendees who have come to listen to us. And hello to my co-panelists. I've met all of you at different times separately, but it's the first time we're all meeting together. So hi, wherever you are. Good to see you guys. To answer your question, question, actually, the big lesson I've learned from my two-film journey doing feature films is that, I mean, before that, I was functioning as a writer in Bollywood. I was trying to do Hindi cinema, Bollywood cinema. But, I always felt that there was, I was not getting anywhere because there was something missing. And I think for a filmmaker, not just a filmmaker, any artist, that something is basically, acknowledging and using that person's roots to create art. So when Gothanodi happened to me, that's what happened to me. I sort of the kind of stuff I started churning out after I made Gothanodi had a different edge to it because, I was comfortable with my identity. Because, since we're talking about the Northeast and India is technically it's a federation, but, it's just that the impulse to sort of suppress regional identities in terms of and sort of believe in a pan-Indian project, a homogeneous country, and that sort of was not working out because it just leaves people like us a lot of confused because the mainstream doesn't really want us, but then it also wants us to become like them. So that struggle is sort of I sort of got out of that kind of a situation by just sort of embracing my identity as an Assamese person. And I sort of, then since then I felt that, my art has sort of improved.
You embracing the identity has been all about the art improving is what you say, is it? But if I were to look at the growth from, say, Kothanodi to Amis, where was it a question of roots, and where was it kind of a more how does one say, a more outgrown, a more reaching out, a bit more of a universal experience? Was there a move from say a position A to position B when insofar as your movement is concerned?
Well, of course, the big difference was that Amis was a better funded film.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you can see there's a difference in the quality of in the way it was shot and conceived. But what I was trying to say, what I always try to say is that the impulse that to expand the reach of our cinema, we have to become like Indian cinema is a notion that I don't think I agree with anymore, because I feel that's the difference that makes us stand out as because we do not have the kind of impact that Malayalam cinema, for instance, has on the cinemas of India. Although we should, and all of us, all the different states in the Northeast too, because we are such distinct cultures and we're so different from the mainstream, and that is what it is all about. It's all about the diversity of our country. So we should use that as a strength rather than try to create films that look like films from a generic pan-Indian cinema thing. But the thing is that our markets, if we do it in our local languages, there's hardly any theaters. There is no distribution system here which can sustain filmmaking. So that is why while we make films with local settings, local stories, local characters, the vision of the stories, if they could be global, then we have a market around the world. If we make a generic, if we make a film, a genre film, let's say about we make a romance, that is something that people in Mexico or Australia also understand. So we, immediately the reach of your film increases because of digital. Of course, it's supported by this whole environment of digital marketplace for films, and of course subtitles. So that is the kind of idea with which I'm now approaching cinema that I make in Assam, in the Assamese language. That while the stories are local, the vision and the narrative should be it should appeal to a global cinema goer.
Where does the Hindi film fit in here? After the rootedness that you say made your cinema better, you're again going back and quoting an industry which disappointed you earlier.
Yeah, I did, but now I'm in a stronger position and I need to make money. It's my career. It's not a passion or a hobby. That I make films.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do when my ideas, basically somebody funds my films, and these are projects that I had worked on a lot when I was working in Bombay. So it's a sense of achievement also that they've come to fruition right now.
So do I see a clear divide, that there will be one set of films which would be the Assam films, and then there'll be another set of films which would be Bollywood films?
Not really. I really don't. I think invested, so you better pay it back. That should be the attempt. So it doesn't really matter if it's a Hindi film or an Assamese film. But because it is more difficult to raise funds for an Assamese film, the passion component is more there. Because you're passionate about it, you're going to do it. Compared to, like, for instance, if I'm doing something out of, let's say, Bollywood, for instance, then it's just, I'm a career filmmaker, so I'm making a film and, I'm getting paid for it. So that's my attitude.
The other thing which I noticed and which I'm going to put forward to the others as well. But before I let go of you, just one other thing which I wanted to ask you, and this also came up during a discussion I had with you, at the peak of the pandemic and the lockdown, where you were talking about the industry in Guwahati, and I've noticed that all, your films use the cast, crew, technicians from the Northeast. Is there also an attempt, not just about the telling of stories, but also somewhere in the process of telling the stories, building and making the industry there stronger?
Yeah, it's what they say in the development sector, like capacity development. We have to build capacity here for, we have technicians, of course, but what we need is, development of a cinema aesthetic and a vision for cinema. Like, why do we make films? That's a basic question that people should ask themselves in the Northeast. One thing, the most basic answer to that is, of course, to make money and, sort of have a living. But there are more reasons why we make films, especially in the Northeast. So we need to be clear about these kind of things, is what I think.
And you were talking at that time about how there could be an entire setup ready for people to shoot there, much as what happens with other places and other states, which is again maybe more economic aspect of it. But I'm kind of tempted to bring this up because there is this whole competitive race kind of thing happening between various states, where you are given an award at the end of the year about which is the most shooting friendly state. So I'm wondering whether that kind of a logic would apply to the Northeast at all. I mean, again, using it as one term, but obviously aware and of the diversity there. But you think that could be a way to the future?
Definitely, because like any other part of India, we do offer a lot of locations for shooting. And that's another part of it. The government is obviously trying to, I think all governments in the Northeast are trying to entice people especially from Bollywood, to come and shoot in the Northeast. It's been going on. So that is good because, we can build capacity, but then the capacity has to find work also. And because we do not make so many films in the Northeast, these people have to be employed. So it's good if units are coming from outside the Northeast and, hiring local crews. Because we can have that. We already have a lot of people working in film and television here. And the number is only increasing. So that's never going to be a problem.
And I think as is always the case, two sides to the coin, there would be many issues with that as well, which I hope will come forth later as we go about the discussion. I'm going to come to Naro now, because I find her journey very, very interesting. Somebody who lived and studied outside and then chose to go back to Kohima and make films there. Would love to know from her if what was it, again, the pull of the identity as in Bhaskar's case when it came to making his own films. Was it somewhere a negotiation with that kind of made you go back, rather than choosing to stay on in outside of the state?
Actually, there were a lot of reasons that I decided to come home. But the idea of trying to make films here was actually slowly. If you see my work also, I think as I shoot, I'm also trying to learn about the state. I'm also trying to learn about my people. And I think you can see that in the film as well, because I think the more I travel, the more I make films, the more I make documentaries. I think when you say identity, I think I'm also rediscovering it for myself. And there's so much that I am learning as I'm making my films. And like I said, I think I was away since I was 5 or 5, 6. So it's taken me a long while to come to this point where I can say that yes, there's so much now that I feel more in tune with the Naga people, and and I'm at a place where I know I can tell the stories that I want to tell. So yeah, it's been a long journey.
Uh, I was also struck about the gender perspective here, and I'll come to Rajni also on it later. On the one hand, a kind of sense of reintegration, and also the perspective which is very, from a woman's point of view. Uh, I would love to know, how is it in Nagaland at the moment? Forget about the question of identity for a minute. Let's look at the gender question and see that when it comes to, again, the region, where do women filmmakers stand? What has been the landscape like for them?
So the situation that I see in Nagaland, uh, the filmmakers, the documentary filmmakers that are there, are only women. I think only women have stuck it out. There may have been few men that came in and made a film or two, but then they seem to have left this profession and tried something else more lucrative. So I don't know if money is an issue, because I think they see our profession as not something that they can make a living off in Nagaland. So the ones that are actually actively making documentaries are only women. There are very few of us, and I think we've stuck it out. I'm saying we are sticking it out. So at the moment, I don't see too many men
Mhm.
trying to make films in Nagaland. So
Mhm.
that's the scenario at the moment.
And how does the woman's gaze on the various issues kind of, if not alter, add up to the narrative? I'm sure it is all to do with issues which are kind of in the eye, which people are talking about, that are crucial and central to the place. How do you, as a woman filmmaker, change or bring about a distinct look to it?
So if you see our societal setup, it's actually very patriarchal, and lots of the things that we shoot in the villages, or in our community setups, are geared only for men. So there are times when I've gone to shoot, and uh, maybe like there's community fishing or community hunting, and they don't catch anything. So it's because a woman has come into the fore. You know what I mean? When a woman is there amongst the men, they consider it as bad luck. But here I am thrust into that place where I have no choice but to stand there and shoot. So then the men had just kind of have to look and say, okay, that's the situation. So it's very, I think it's also difficult for them to kind of look at women being in the role, telling them what to do. But slowly, I think it is something that they have to accept, because the only people that come to shoot them are the women. The only people that are asking them questions are the women that come there to shoot. So slowly but surely, I think they are accepting the way that we make films, the way that we tell films, we tell our stories. I think the men are coming around to the way we are portraying the Naga view.
Mhm. So you're being quite a disruptive presence there, is it?
Yeah, I've been told to like sometimes move, because like it's bad luck to be there, or it's not good for a woman to like be at that spot. But yeah, I just have to stick it out and be there.
Rajni, your film, July, insurgency, the violence, the political issues, AFSPA, all these issues have been kind of part of the discourse, and there are also filmmakers, let me tell you, who think that, there is a certain hegemony when it comes to the discourse in cinema, which involves, when it comes to the Northeast, which either involves the politics or the cultural aspect. There is that, the anthropological and ethnographic gaze, or whether it's about politics. And there are filmmakers who would want to go beyond these, beyond the two themes, primary themes as well. But what compelled you to, kind of, tell a story which is all about, the violence that has been experienced, and located in a family? And again, there is the woman's gaze there, which, a woman as a protagonist, and the woman behind the camera as well. and somewhere perhaps a more gentler, more gentle, more humanitarian, more hopeful gaze which comes to play. How did you go about it? Something about that, Rajni.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, I would like to thank Urban Lens, Subhashri, and of course our panel head, Namrata, and everyone else who are attending this discussion. Uh, to answer your first question, why I chose this, is that your question?
Yeah, in the sense that like I said, of late there is a certain kind of dialogue which happens where I find a lot of filmmakers also telling me that they want to get away from it, to to rather than just getting into a zone where a certain kind of cinema gets identified from the region, going away from it, and perhaps doing more universal stories, or using a different form to deal with it. Uh, uh, Whereas you have very specifically located it in that context, so I wanted to know a bit more about it, about how you went about it.
Right. So the story of July is very personal to me, and it is not a story of my family, but it could be story of everyone from the Northeast. The Northeast that all of us saw in last 30 years. And my family has gone through a lot and during the insurgency. So therefore, it was only natural for me to say a slice of what we saw through this film. And from so much has happened in last 25, 30 years in our region, and it's not even long ago. A lot of our people, our young people, they're unaware the depth of things that their parents or their grandparents had to go through. And when we ask them sometime, they say, oh yeah, we have heard something like that has happened, as if that happened 200 years ago. It just happened a decade, 2 decades ago. So I always believe that we must forgive, we should be able to forgive our perpetrators. However, we should not forget our past, because our future is built on our past, on the knowledge of our past. So therefore, that was another reason why I picked up this story, to bring back and try to tell to my younger generation in a small way. And yeah, being a woman and a filmmaker, a storyteller, I have observed this, that in conflict zone like ours, it's the women and children who suffer the most. And the women are almost the unsung heroes, because when the men choose to take certain path, it is their choice. They kind of know what they are getting into, but it's not the women's choice. They're simply told one fine day that the men are leaving, and the women are usually half educated, not educated, untrained, unskilled, and they suddenly they find themselves struggling with a new life without the men. And they have to now look after themselves, and not just herself, her kids, not just the kids, but also the aging parents often of the men who have left them. So I wanted to tell this story through women, from the point of view, who who have gone through this. Our protagonist Alari in July. She loses her husband first, and then her son, of course, and her entire family, and how she stands up and leads her life and trying to make the most of it. So this is the reason why I chose to tell this story through a woman. And probably, sorry, if this particular story was told through men, it would have been very different film, I guess. Then we would have had to follow the men to the jungle and their negotiation with their enemy. But here in July, we showed the women how we saw them, how they negotiated in their daily life.
You know, coming to your own journey, Rajni, you have worked, you know, across the spectrum, mainstream, independent, you know, films from the region and Bollywood. How do you see yourself swinging in so many different roles? What is you? Is it an amalgamation of everything, or is one part of you more you know, prominent than the other? How do you manage to kind of work with so many different you know, zones of cinema and you know, identity, so to speak?
Dare I say amalgamation of a lot of things. And I think I'm a grabber. So whatever comes my way, I don't say no. Whether small, big, every opportunity I accept. And I think every small role, every small thing that we do in our life, that helps us to build ourselves. So whatever comes my way, whether it is the role of Mary Com's mother in the film Mary Com, or the small role in my friend Sanjeev Dey's film Three Smoking Barrels, I have never said no, and I continue to I plan to continue to be that way. And initially, when I started making films, producing my first film in 2004, for which our film Anurag, someone else directed it, and the director is no more in our midst now. That film received state awards, several state awards, as Subhasri has mentioned in the earlier. So that film was about family drama. Then my directorial debut film, Rag, in 2014 was relationship drama. So basically, it's been very human-centric, relationship-centric stories I have been writing. But Jalai is the first, I would say, political, socio-political film, and I plan to continue to write on various topics, script on various things, especially when I went back to make Jalai. I came across a lot of women in the village, because I shot in the village, and although I come from that area, in Boro area, I am a Boro, and so I kind of had lost touch to a certain extent, and the issues that our women face there. And it is a popular belief that the tribal society is very gender neutral. That's myth. It's very, very patriarchal, and women and men do work together. But what I have learned during the making of Jalai is that the moment the the crops are put in the barns. After that, women has no say. Even if she wants to buy a piece of cloth, she has to take permission from the men to sell, to be able to sell a few kgs of rice. But on the other hand, the men would sell any amount of crops, for whatever reason they need money, and whether it's for drinking or buying a motorbike or bicycle. So it's a free hand for them. So when I went back to Assam to make this jelly, and I studied the gender politics in the village, it made me feel closer to the root again, and it made me want to explore the complexities that our women, the Boro women, face in everyday life. And in coming days, I plan to work on gender issues, maybe.
And as a director, the films would be set in Assam, but as an actor, you want to embrace it all, whether you get a role in a Hindi film or an American film.
Anywhere, anywhere.
Like you said, the grabber that you are.
Yeah, the grabber that I am. I am ready to travel anywhere under the planet for work.
Okay, I'm going to move to Paban now, but before that, just a little, house rule, so to speak, for the attendees. There is a Q&A tab, at the bottom of the screen. Would love it if all the attendees, who feel like asking questions, could start putting in their questions there, so that I can take it up. Maybe if it is pertinent to the discussion at that moment, I'll raise it at that time, or after we are done with a round of conversation, I can go to the questions put up there. So I'm going to move to Pawan now. Pawan, in your case also, quite like Naro, you maybe not, she went out when she was 5, but you also studied outside and then have been making films which are on subjects which are very rooted. Was that always the intent, or after the film school, film studies, did you also have a thought of locating yourself elsewhere?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, Pavan.
Yeah. Thanks, Namrata. Thanks, Urban Lens. I think it was always in us. I mean, coming from this part of the region, I did my graduation from Mysore University. My schooling was in Manipur in Kendriya Vidyalaya. It was very natural, while coming from this region, we always wanted to. It was not just films. When we were outside, we always wanted to tell about our dances, our stories. I think it was very common for us to do that, and and I always, that only brought me into cinema, basically, to tell stories about our place. So yeah, that's how I think it started like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they are always personal, something that kind of reaches out to you in terms of how you start on a project, how you start on a film. Is that what drives you?
When I'm making a film,
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's about what's happening around me and what's really affecting me as a person. So it's mostly about my surrounding, about my contemporary issues, which I maybe I read it in a newspaper, or maybe I maybe my friends are telling it, or it's happening in front of me. So maybe it has also grown more because I have been doing documentaries for all these years. My stories come from daily happening around me, and subjects which are very close to me, very personal to me. Yeah.
But when you transition from documentary to feature films, what changes, or maybe nothing changes other than the fact that it is a feature film and not a documentary, or are there changes there as well?
I think when I was doing my first fiction, I was planning to do it the way I have been doing documentaries. So I wanted real people to come in the film. I wanted real situation. Basically, I'm also I really enjoy playing around with the form. So I wanted to do the fiction the way I have been doing documentaries. Uh, no, sir, and I believe that certain things can't be can't be enacted. So yeah, and maybe maybe the themes, the kind of stories I'm taking, maybe that allows me to do that. So yeah, maybe that is also one way of looking at my stories. So yeah, like my last film, I did a documentary on that, and basically from the documentary I made the feature film.
Mhm.
So yeah, maybe.
But even in Loktak Lairambi, you use the local, non-actors, not professional actors. Is that the way to go about it?
Not in every film.
Mhm.
I think it depends on the subject.
Mhm.
And here what I was doing was I was doing the recce of my feature film, and then suddenly I realized that I need to know the place properly. I need to understand the people in the lake. I need to understand their problems. So, and slowly while doing the documentary, usually documentary takes a lot of time, so it took me around 3 years to complete the documentary. So during the process I had a story, so I somehow molded that story in their life. So it that was what I wanted to do, and that subject allowed me to do that also. But
Mhm.
I molded my story a little bit here and there. And in my new film that I'm doing, I also, because of COVID, I had to change the whole storyline, and I somehow, yeah, I somehow molded that whole story. I mean, the whole story changed. Maybe the idea remains the same, but the whole situation and the sequences changed because of COVID.
Mhm.
So, so
This is the documentary, the new documentary that you're talking about.
no, this is a new feature.
Feature film.
I've
Okay.
just locked the editing. So
Okay.
that's what the
Okay.
one I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay. The education aspect of it, you did your film studies, you trained as a filmmaker, and there would be others doing the same. How has that changed the landscape of cinema? Again, maybe we are using one term to describe the entire region, but has that also brought about any changes in the cinema being made?
Definitely. I think the best example is Assam. Assam has the film school, and I think in the last, if you look at the last 5 6 years, the kind of films coming up from Assam and the kind of filmmakers coming from Assam are very different. And I think it has to do with film education. And I always tell this to in Manipur that we really need a film school here. It's really good that the India government is setting up a third national film school in Arunachal, because yeah, talking about myself, I was assisting Aribam Samsarma, and I was already making films when I went to the film school. But I always thought that I always believe in film education, and especially in education. So uh, so I think I had to try for 6 years to go to the film school, and finally, yeah, I got admission. And that's why, because cinema is such a technical medium, such a medium that you need to understand the medium properly before making films. And right now, I mean, if you look at the last 5 years, if you look at Dominic from Arunachal, Wang Frang, Naro, Naro, and yeah, maybe but some filmmakers from Manipur also, and from Assam, this Jai Chang, they all are from film schools, and yeah, and they're doing great work.
How has technology been an enabler, with the digital kind of technology coming in? Has that also led to the spread of this urge to make movies has kind of gained ground?
Definitely. But I will I will never imagine. I mean, I would never imagine making a feature film. But when I started my career around 2000, 1999, so that time we never thought that, I never thought that I'll make a feature film. But then slowly, by 2000, digital technology started coming, and I think Manipur was, so it's considered one of the first places in India to have an industry, digital, so-called digital film industry of its own. And even we got the national awards to include digital films in the national awards. I mean, we file an PIL in the court and all, we did that. So and there were mushrooming of films, in especially in Manipur. We used to have around 300 productions a year. Yeah, before digital, it was hardly one or two films in a year, or maybe one film in a year. uh, yeah, and documentaries as well. So yeah, it definitely helped.
So it's kind of making the what we call the image getting democratized, but at the same time you feel that the training is of primary importance.
Yeah, I mean, the best example is Manipur. That's why I
Mhm.
always keep on telling my juniors there,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
especially the film development society in Manipur.
Mhm.
Though the government has started a uh, film school in Manipur, it's yet to be functional. It like
Mhm.
started 3 years back, but we are still struggling to have teachers. And
Mhm.
but hopefully, I think it should. They have listened to it, and hopefully, it will start soon.
Okay, okay, okay. I'm going to move to Wanfrang now. With Lonnie, my introduction to your work, uh, uh, the whole noir element, the gumshoe, the femme fatale, and yet, the whole cultural context. The objects getting lost as though the past is disappearing. You were able to weave in the Khasi culture with a form which is a very the noirish form very well. Something about that, in terms of breaking the formal expectations of cinema. How did you go about it? Because the same issue of cultural identity of the past could have been dealt with in a very straight-laced manner as well, isn't it?
Uh, I mean, yes and no.
Mhm.
To answer your question short, but firstly, before I even begin, I'd like to thank the IIHS for being persistent and going ahead with the Urban Lens Film Festival, and also to the other panelists for taking time out and being present here. I know pretty much all of them, and I've also had the joy and honor of meeting quite a few of them at film festivals. Um, but I mean, to answer your question, I don't think there is one way to make a film, and I don't think that the way in which I have chosen to address um, my film is the way forward. I think what just got my attention was the fact that I was, so to say, like tired and disgusted of just seeing a certain kind of an exoticization of the area, and therefore that also propelled me to make a film that was perhaps subs, uh, subversive in a certain manner, without thinking of that in the first place even. And I think it also stems from the other art practices that I'm also involved in, and how all of them sort of trickle into my works, and how they also inform the way and the manners in which I choose to address the stories, and the kind of characters that I choose to engage with and put on screen. Um, and I like what I want said earlier on, the need for this a kind of an institution to teach filmmaking. But I think it's also imperative to understand that what is the philosophy that guides these film schools as well? In the process of these film schools being set up by the government, does that also mean that there is a guiding underlying sarkari ideology that is going to determine the kind of content? Because this is art, this is where ideas are being born, and this is where ideas take form, and this is where ideas also become dangerous in that sense. So I mean, that's of course an entire discourse altogether, but yeah, I choose to make films the way in which I feel is best to perhaps address the stories.
But this is also kind of, I was watching your documentary again, the whole complexity of the, the Khasi identity. Somewhere the theme runs through in the feature film as well. It's something, it's something that kind of has always been strongly something very strongly that you identified with very strongly.
I mean, yes, of course, and in fact, in 2013 or 14, just before we got on air, I was discussing with Subhasri about the documentary that I had done, Where the Clouds End, which is about the whole notion of the inner line permit and situating my own personal self in that film, about how these borders determine who an insider is or an outsider is, in that sense. And I think that my journey and my presence in various parts of the country and elsewhere has also been me to understand this insider outsider complex slightly better and in a more nuanced way. And and it's interesting that you mentioned that there is a running similarity between the kind of issues that I choose to raise in my documentary, my fiction and non-fiction forms, and it's something that perhaps the rest of the country or the rest of the world is going through. Where do people fit in extremely consumerist-based identities? How do people become, so to say, tribes in this modern context? And also, I think with regards to whatever that we've discussed and I've heard earlier on, I think we also run this dangerous scenario of where we perhaps assume that the tribe is also a collective identity, and that in itself is a process of homogenizing our identities, at the same level, But yeah, there is a certain kind of a reality that's being reflected in all my works, be it the documentary form or be it the non-fiction form or the fiction form or the installations and the music and the poetries and yeah, it is a reflection of the reality that I encounter my day-to-day experiences in life.
Because it's interesting that you kind of talk about the again hegemonic kind of discourse coming in within the representation of the culture, and even the identity politics has many layers to it, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
There is this element of telling your own stories, lest the outsider kind of comes in and exoticize it with with her gaze or his gaze. The other element is to get fixed in that pigeonhole, and I know filmmakers who would not want to, who would perhaps want to make some a musical which is a very Hollywoodian musical. I mean, I'm not, it may sound very as though I'm putting a derivative thing to it, but just for the sake of argument, and if you want to be a player in a bigger arena, say in Hollywood or Bollywood for that matter, isn't there a danger at one level of somewhere getting co-opted in a very homogenized narratives that the industry produces, or the other danger is that you are kept at the periphery, you are kind of remain an other. I just find it problematic to think of how this whole identity thing would be play out. It is a complex creature, isn't it?
It is. I mean, you remind me of Ye Gulistan Hai Hamara, when you talk about these things, and pretty interesting film if we had to take a look at it all over again. But at the same time, you also have filmmakers from the region themselves who sort of present themselves in a certain exoticized fashion, and it's amazing because you sort of present a reality that perhaps is something that is not true to your own, So in other words, what I'm saying is I often find people from Shillong, making these touristy type films, and it's perfectly fine. I often wonder, what do they see when they look through those lenses, um, and at these traditional dances that are dancing in front of them, or these pristine hills and these traditional huts, and the people drinking the local alcohol and the people farming. Because keep in mind that also the region is also extremely urbanized. There are cities there. There are spaces of commercial interest that people traverse and obviously encounter different kinds of cultures and identities, and in the process also share and interact different kinds of ideas as well. Um, but with regards to being pigeonholed, I, I, I don't know. I mean, I'm quite happy living and working from Shillong. Work takes me here, there, and everywhere. But I think, the word going back as well, which you mentioned earlier on in quotes, I think it almost as if it seems as if to imply that you can't step out anymore once you go back. But I think, society is such and the world is such that you can traverse from one place to the other and still carry on doing interesting work. And it's not necessary that your films or your music or your poetry or your art has to be a particular way because of where you come from. It is important to perhaps remember and identify or be aware of your roots and your identities. But I don't think that should be just the guiding factor in the manner in which you choose to address your works, And I might get to direct a film set somewhere else tomorrow, and I would pick it up. It doesn't mean that just because I live in Shillong, I don't choose to direct a Marathi film or a Bollywood film or a Tamil film for that matter. Um, so yeah, I I think it's perfectly fine to come from a certain space and not want to do the kind of films that are coming out from that space. So yeah.
So, in other words, identity is something which is a very fluid entity for you.
Personally,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I think we shed and gain and lose and morph ourselves into various kinds of identities every day, depending on the context that you're trying to address. If I have to be in Shillong, do I perform or do I behave in a manner that a person from that space does? Perhaps yes. If I were to have a Starbucks, do I perform and behave like a so-called indigenous person? No. So it's also about how you choose to perform in different spaces as well. And sometimes what I find cringeworthy is this performance that people tend to overperform, or this overperformance of people in these spaces that just further exoticizes themselves. So you become like this living museum that you present yourself to the world. And it's where perhaps all the four legs of a chair don't really match.
Mhm. Does it come, I mean, again, I'm just throwing it in the air. Does it come
Please do.
from pandering to a supposed audience, than being organic to your own identity?
I don't think it has to do anything about pandering. I think it has to do with what exactly are you trying to address. If someone is making a film for a corporate client, just because he's from the Northeast doesn't necessarily mean that all of those identities have to be kept in his place. But if I were to do a film of my own, such as say perhaps like a Lorni, or a Where the Clouds End, or a Because We Did Not Choose, and in all of these other films, I know that I'm not going to compromise with regards to what I need to say. And that is perhaps an extension of where I come from and the politics that I choose to address. And there is no compromise, and I'm not going to pander anymore in those circumstances. Whereas in the larger scheme of this whole anxiety-ridden lives that we live, this consumerist-based identities that we need to subscribe to, of course, there is a certain kind of a pandering, and anyone who said that they're not performing would be an absolute liar. So yeah.
I'm going to come to the audience questions, and
Mhm.
the first one that kind of is staring back at me is, I think, one anonymous attendee is
Mhm.
offended about the women's gaze that we spoke about. and I'll bring Naro and Rajni into it. It's sad that we still have to justify women's stories which are made through women's lens. How do you respond when you're constantly addressed as a woman filmmaker? And to Bhaskar and Pavan about how they feel about being a male filmmaker.
Should I go first?
Please go ahead.
Well, in one word, I feel awkward because it's the 21st century, and men are finally being held accountable for a lot of private and public misdemeanors or whatever you may call it. But as an artist, as a male artist, as a filmmaker, you're anyway, you're not the typical person that you think of when you think of a product of a patriarchal culture. We anyway, I mean, I speak for myself, and it's also a conscious decision because I work in art. It's an art, like you need to balance both the yin and the yang, because you're all kinds of characters. So yeah, I mean, it's not to say that we do not have this gaze, which is obviously male, because we are products of, like I said, a patriarchal culture. But as a filmmaker, I try to be conscious of that fact, and I try to bring some balance in my work, and I try not to let that color the kind of stories that I want to tell.
Pavan.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I never thought seriously about this, but somehow, it's rooted in our culture. So maybe yeah, it's how you look at things. But I definitely we now we are very conscious, and we try to bring balances in certain things, but not very consciously. I never really seriously thought about such things. And mostly, yeah, definitely I being a male filmmaker, definitely Pavan being a filmmaker, not male, Pavan being a filmmaker, it's about him. But yeah, definitely when you're telling a story, you have to keep everything, not just other things, but everything you have to take care of everything. Yeah.
Rajni and Naro, I think the idea of a woman's gaze, so to speak, has not gone down too well. But I would want you to dwell on it a little more,
I had no problem to say a film from women gaze. I have a problem when I am introduced as meet Rajni Basmatari, a woman filmmaker from Northeast or India. So that is where my problem is. But I really don't see any problem when people discuss women gaze and male gaze. Being attributed to their films, because I believe that women have slightly different gaze than male. That's my personal belief. A lot of people don't agree with me in that. Yeah, so that is not to say that, like, there are many men who are feminist, so they also have such gaze which is very close to say female artist or female filmmaker. This is not to say that they're not capable of imagining or saying, telling a story in such a way, but yeah, I recognize when someone says this is so female gaze film, so I'm fine with it.
Naro, in terms of Nagaland, it was the whole. Is she there? I think she's not there.
Yes. No, I'm here.
Yeah. In case of Nagaland, it is specifically to point out a development which is happening, not to kind of categorize as male or female, isn't it?
Yes, actually, I'm talking about the entire process of when we make a documentary, or I go into a new space, or I go into a new village, how we are treated when we come in. So sometimes the interaction behind the scenes as well, when I meet people. So I wonder sometimes when you talk about the male gaze, the female gaze, I wonder if the same things that I asked my protagonists, would they be answering the same way to a man as they're answering to me, or how they would be, structuring their answers because I'm a woman. So when I say the female gaze, that is what I mean, is their reaction to me. It's not exactly like how I'm looking at them. It's how they are reacting to me, what they are saying to me, and how they are structuring what they are saying to me because I'm a woman. So then that's the film that comes out. So that's the end product that comes out. It's their reaction to me as a woman in my societal setup. So I think that is primarily what I'm talking about when I say the female gaze. So for men to kind of go into that space and ask them the questions that I ask them, I often wonder if the reactions will be the same or the answers will be the same. So I think that is what comes out in the film. So that is then the product, the film that comes out is their reaction to me and my questions. So that is how I would put my woman's gaze into the film. I can't hear you. Sorry. I think you're mute. Sorry.
Doni Raj Mushahari. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. There's a question saying, in today's film scenario, short films are in vogue, and what are your views on them? This is for the entire panel. Whoever would want to pick it up, views on short films. Would anyone want? Wanfrang, you would want to take it up in terms of...
Sorry. Say that. So So what was the question again about someone wanting to do short films?
No. It says that today's filmmaking scenario, short films have come to be in vogue. What are your views on them? I mean, I presume whether they are looking at short films as a stepping stone to making features or documentaries. But it's a general question about short films.
Okay. Well, short films are very good. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's a very tricky question. I'm not sure I can answer that for you. I mean,
or maybe specifically if you've seen some films which would help you kind of dwell on them a little more. Do you see more of them coming in now?
I think I think also with the coming of OTT platforms and the different kinds of social media platforms that one can access content, I do find myself watching extremely short content because of the time factor when I'm traveling or when I'm moving about, and sometimes they're not even films. They're like these stories that people put up on Instagram, and I find that extremely fascinating because that is a little bit like a short film, of someone's day-to-day activities or someone's life. I think all these fine lines of what makes a film, what makes a short film, what makes someone's Instagram story a documentary or a slice of fiction, all these lines are getting extremely blurred, and I like that kind of blending of these different forms into one. And so I think in terms of the kind of content that's going to come out, it's something that's worth taking a look at. And yeah, I think that if from a strictly professional perspective, I think to assume that a short film is going to be a stepping stone towards making a longer fiction film, or a longer documentary, I think it gives a sense of discipline of what you need to do in a production environment. But I think by and large, filmmaking is something that you sort of learn by keeping your eyes and ears open to it, in the surrounding that you're situated at. And I think that the film schools or formal learning spaces render you the technical expertise, and just like a short film will perhaps allow you the experience to gauge certain kind of technical requisites to make larger fiction. But that's I mean, there are no rules. I don't think that's the only way forward. I would suggest whoever asks me to post Instagram videos every day, build a good following, have a huge number of followers, and be the next internet sensation.
Another anonymous attendee, would you say that getting into the mainstream with OTT like Netflix in the case of Akhuni is a good way to reach larger audience?
Is that for me?
It's generally for the panelists, all of you.
Okay. Okay.
So anyone who would want to answer that?
Yeah, I think if I may answer.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it is a very good way to reach people. Like comparatively small film like Akhune, I'm not sure how many screens it got across the country, but thanks to OTT platform like Netflix, it has been able to reach a lot of people, which is a very good thing. And if I may just take 2 minutes to answer Donny Musahari's question, the earlier question,
Yeah.
in just a few seconds, I'll finish. Like to add what Wafrang has said, I think Donny, he has just put out his statement saying it's in vogue. Short films are in vogue. I tend to agree, and like Wafrang has said, with coming of various platforms like Instagram and YouTube, I think short film is indeed in vogue, and in a small way, it is a stepping stone to bigger things in their career. And when they make short films, I think it provides them some experience, hands-on experience, and it provides them, therefore, confidence. And I think it's a good thing if it is in vogue. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Okay, there is a question from Preetham Patowari. There's always a thing called director's voice. Is it mandatory to always keep in mind about one's own unique storytelling and perception? Would any one of you take that? Pavan, would you take that? I think Pavan is not there, or yeah. So I'll just throw it open again to the panel about own unique storytelling, perception, and director's voice. I think that would primarily be guiding everyone, isn't it? It's more a
Yeah. Can you hear me?
yeah. Is that Pavan? I can hear you,
Yeah.
but I can't see I can't see you there.
Yeah, because there's no light.
Okay.
So I'll just I'll just put on the microphone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Is
can
it
hear
okay?
you. I can hear you well. Yeah, let it. Yeah, I can hear you well. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I think it's very important to have it's not about the whole vision is about the filmmaker, what he's trying to do or what I'm trying to do. So it's very it's very natural that it comes in the film. And the I think the problem starts when you when it doesn't have a direction, when the story of the film doesn't have a direction. So I think it's very natural for the vision of the director or the filmmaker to come in the film.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh, Another question which I think takes off, which one could take off from the OTT question that had come up, the distribution of films. I think ultimately it kind of this is one thing which I wanted to address, in terms of the industry itself. One of my friends always keeps telling me that before the term independent cinema was invented, everyone in the Northeast was anyhow making independent films. In this scenario, this whole structure that is there, of production, financing, distributing, exhibiting, how does that get addressed? And how has it developed and contributed in any way or not contributed in any way? And you, as independent voices, do you want to engage with that structure, or do you want to do your own thing? How does it come to play? Should, Wang Frang, if you could take off from there, and Lorne would be a good example to look at as to, how to take it to the viewers out there.
That's an extremely interesting observation on your part, Namrata, because even with regards to the entire pre-production of Lodi, we were very, very conscious to sort of make it a very Shillong production in that sense, even the fact that we had Adil as the person playing the lead, it was not because he was a known face, it was simply because the fact that he played this insider outsider character for the film, and we were very conscious to have like an entire production team that was set, or rather that was from Shillong, and the only thing that we could not access was, of course, the technical requirements which we managed to source from the nearest city of Guwahati. But even with regards to the edit and the post-production, pretty much all of it was executed and done in Shillong, except for the final coloring and the sound that was done in Bombay. Now, with regards to how the film has been received and how it has been accessed, we've been able to premiere it at the Talent Black Nights Film Festival, and I believe it was the only Indian film in competition at the first feature category. So that's and for a small budget film to assert itself in such a large arena speaks volumes of the capacity and the possibilities of films coming from small towns. And I wouldn't just say the Northeast for that matter; it could be anywhere in the country. That the means and ways to make a film are much more democratic now. And I think that independent films are those kind of films that are not supported or are not being given a helping hand by larger studios. And it's no longer about the geography of where you're coming from, because geography doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have access to money nowadays. And as we all know, that is the determining factor as far as films are concerned. And then I think that the only thing that was going on the back of my head at that point of time was just to make a good and honest film, just to tell a good story, and then perhaps everything will fall into place after that. I wasn't, thinking of where it was going to be premiered. I wasn't thinking of who's going to buy the film. I wasn't thinking of, the other logistics with regards to how many screens will it have. And of course, I can say that with a certain amount of confidence because it was a small budget film. The moment you have a big budget film, then there are more and more pressures perhaps that you need to pander to, like do you need to, how many A-listers does the film need to have? What is the story that needs to be addressed? Can we change the story a certain way because, it will cater to a larger audience who will eventually determine the revenue for the film. So in that situation, the creative activity or the creative faculty of the director takes a back seat because he has to pander to these 10 million other things that would render the film a certain kind of a commercial success, But I think that, and this is a message perhaps to every aspiring filmmaker out there, no matter where you're from and no matter the resources that, whatever little resources that are available at your disposal. I think it's just, being able to tell a good story, make a decent film, and learn from the surroundings that you immerse yourself in, as opposed to trying to look like a film being made by person ABC, because if I make a film like person ABC, this film will make it into a festival, And I think we get caught in this film festival chakkar that suddenly we forget what we are trying to do, Why am I a storyteller? It is because I'm a Khasi person, and that it is part and parcel of my intrinsic identity as someone who comes from an storytelling culture. Okay, this is how I'm going to take my philosophy, this is how I'm going to take my stories forward, this is how I'm going to take my entire identity forward, whether or not in the process of me continuing to extend my traditional identity using these modern means of cinema and music and other forms, whether or not they make it into film festivals, that's another story. But I know that when I go to sleep late at night, I wake up the next morning telling myself that I've done my bit for my own community.
No, the attendee who has put forth this question is also, I think somewhere I kind of sense, a lack of access for, the cinema, because, the wider distribution is what, the attendee is talking about. The trend
Right.
normally seems to be that unless an international film festival picks up the film or a streaming platform, many of us never get to see stroke hear about these incredible films, which I also think quite a few times it
That's
happens. We are not aware of the good stuff happening in our own backyards, and this whole earlier, because of the whole piracy mechanism, for good or
no, I
bad,
agree. No,
yeah.
there's absolutely you've got it spot on out there. And just to add to what you mentioned just now, I think there's a certain kind of a you know QC or a quality factor that these digital platforms look at, and most of the films don't meet those criteria. Now, just because they don't meet those criteria, are those films good or bad? That's another debate altogether. So at and a lot of the films, except for perhaps Assam and Manipur, most of the filmmaking communities in the Northeast are very, very nascent. So for them to be able to arrive at a certain kind of a category or a certain kind of a technical requisite is sometimes difficult. And for people
Mhm.
who do want to watch these films, there are some platforms out there. Movie Scenes, I think, puts up a lot of
Yeah.
films from the Northeast.
Yeah.
There are some films like one of the panelists mentioned earlier. Also, I think someone from the audience mentioned like Akun is out there online. But keep in mind that also the watching of these films does not give you a true color of the reality of the people. No, that is a representation of a reality by someone. So I guess one also needs to do a little
And
backpacking and
even
explore.
if I were to expand the argument a little more, even
Yeah.
what the OTT platform is supposed, like there is this whole thing that they will take the independent and small cinema and provide a platform. But is it really happening, or
Yeah, yeah,
Nam-
yeah,
is there a
Na-
mainstreamization there as well?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Of course there is.
Yeah. Pavan, I think you wanted to say
yeah,
something. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
please.
because I totally agree with you, Namrata, because I have experienced it. Until unless your film goes to a big festival, or or some kind of award, otherwise they are not interested. After all, I think after all they all are interested in business. And
It's true.
yeah, I mean, finally it all comes down to business, and nobody's bothered about the independent cinema or anything. As far as I see it, nobody cares. So as an independent filmmaker, we can't depend on all this distribution. Obviously, I mean,
Correct.
if they're taking it, fine, but we cannot always depend on them. And you can see the kind of films they're interested in. If there is the whole, if you look at all the this thing OTT platforms, you can see most of them. I'm not saying maybe movie scenes or one or two, maybe, but most of them, you can see the kind of films they really are interested in. Forget about regional cinema, and regional
Mhm.
cinema in the sense this
Hmm.
films made in lesser known languages. So I think as an independent filmmaker, we have to somehow, try and find out different new ways of showing our films. And we cannot depend on the OTT platforms. And even the running. Suppose if you're talking about a film from, suppose, for Akoni, you need to do a lot of publicity even for the ordinary people to know about it. So it's not just that the film is on OTP and OTT OTT platform, and we know about it. I mean, when my film was in Netflix, I mean, nobody knew about it. And yeah, I mean, without publicity, marketing, nothing reaches to the people.
So
Namrata,
yeah, yeah,
if I
tell me.
may add,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, please do.
when this OTT boom happened 2-3 years ago, I think we all were, the smaller filmmakers, independent filmmakers, were very happy that, okay,
Mhm.
some guarding angels have emerged and we will be covered under the blanket of security. But they also slided out, like uh, my friends have mentioned earlier. Ultimately, it's a money game. It's a commercial, um, commercially driven thing, cinema. So now it is very very, very mainstream now. How they started 2 3 years ago have become something else now. So there is no space for smaller films like ours. And it's good that, Wamprang and Pawan's film Rich, they were able to make space in OTT platforms, but not anymore. The the filmmakers, newer films that arrived a year ago, even they have been talking that they're not touching our kind of films anymore. So things, it's very fluid. It changes. A lot of people just bump into me and say, "Oh, your film is in a tiny little platform called Movie Saints. Why don't you put it in Netflix?" They have no idea. It's not just that we make film and it is ours say, and we go to them and say, "Hey, this is my film, please pick it up." It's not in our hand. So people must understand that things are changing all the time. Yes, OTT platforms came with big hope for all of us, but they are changing their business modules. I don't know what to say. Yeah. So we have to find different ways to survive and fight on. Yeah.
So, Namrata, if I could just quickly add to that,
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's quite. I mean, but the other thing is not to put it, because obviously people are watching this discussion that we're having right now. At the IIHS Urban Lens Film Festival, I think people should also be aware that there are. I mean, the people from the rest of the country should also be aware that there are filmmakers in Northeast who do mainstream films, and the Northeast is not just full of people who make like these different kinds of content like we do, because that in itself would be a misrepresentation of a certain kind.
Absolutely.
There are commercial making filmmakers who I know and whom I'm friends with and who I, have a great time with, and they make what would be called equivalent of the Bollywood CBA great films, Now, I can't sit at this high horse and say that that is not cinema, that is not art, that is, and this is, worthy of a certain kind of an OTT content, or this is certain, worthy of a commercial or an artistic content. What you're doing is not considered art, I think that is also important. I think it's also important to look at why these people are doing what they do. And I, for example, like in Shillong, or in the Jaintia Hills for that matter, where filmmakers spend an average of about anywhere from 5 to 10 lakhs to make a film, and it's pure passion driven, and they break even, say, about 7 lakhs or 11 lakhs, and they sort of break even with a tiny margin. And why are they doing it? They're doing it for the love of it, and yes, what they're doing is perhaps a replica of a certain kind of a mainstream content, but aren't we all replicating a Kiarostami or a Herzog, or why is it okay if we do it and not okay if they do it? Why is it that they are looked out, So I think that also needs to be looked into, that the Northeast is not just full of political filmmakers or people who make only certain kind of a gender centric film, or who have their political conscience always at the forefront. We also have people who make a very kind of content as well. So that's a little footnote that I wanted to add there.
Yeah. Because I mean, I was also about to bring up this other question, which kind of referred to that a bit in terms of the audiences. What is the usual mix? Do locals watch more than others, or is it the opposite? Which again, I think somewhere you are answering that question, because Assam has a huge big industry. I mean, just to give one example, which is so patronized in such a big way by the people there, isn't it? So even the audience mix, which this question wants to address, can't be, there can't be one answer to that, isn't it? It says that the question, I'll just kind of elaborate on it, which says that how would you generally categorize the kind of responses you receive from the audience? Also, what is the usual mix? Do locals watch more than others, or is it the opposite? Usually regional films get more viewership and critique from people outside?
I, I mean, that's a pretty heavy question. I'm not quite sure like what he means by critique. Is it like film
Which,
critique or critical?
which I think again, I mean, pardon me, I'm maybe misreading it entirely, but I think again, it's if one were to look at what it's addressing, perhaps is the independent content, the more indie content, which cuts across any and every language and region of the country, so to speak. And saying that maybe through the festival circuits or through the the cinephile circuit gets talked about more outside the region than within it. But then again, when you bring up the issue that independent is not just the cinema being made, there's a whole huge mainstream industry which perhaps outsiders would not hear of.
Yeah.
This is just my thought. I don't know how you would address it.
Namrata,
Well,
can I? Sorry.
Yeah,
no,
please,
please go on.
Uh,
Yeah.
And also I wanted to add here that when you say film industry in Assam, it's very, very general statement. Because in Assam itself, there are dozens of other languages in which films are made. Like Amis, which is in Assamese, had different faith, different audience than that of Jalai, my film. Both are from Assam. But Jalai had a totally different fate compared to Amis, because the language Boro, the film that was made in, we have about, I'm told, 2 million Boro speaking people. However, there are hardly any cinema hall in Boro areas. Who will watch the film? It's the Boro people who have to watch the film. But because there is no cinema hall in the areas that this language is spoken, so how they show the films are very different, is very different than how the Assamese films are shown. Like in the Boro films are usually shown through mobile film projectors in villages. So the question that you got from one of the attendees who said that independent regional films are appreciated and seen more outside the region and in region itself, I beg to differ, because my film was traveled to at least 60 to it traveled to about 8-9 festivals, but it traveled to 60 to 65 villages in Assam, in Boro areas. So in each of these villages, at least 15 to 20,000 people saw. So 15, 20,000 into 60. So you can count. If we then didn't have this way of showing films to people, then probably very, very few people would have seen Jalai today. So it's not entirely true when someone says that regional films are appreciated and seen outside the region more than in the region itself. Thank you.
We are running out of time, so I think
Yes.
I'll have to call a stop to the the discussion, much as we would want to go on. Thank you so much, Naro, Rajni, Manfrang, Paban, and Bhaskar, who seems to have another urgent appointment to address. Thank you so much for sparing time. This has sparked off many more questions, and I think I'll carry it forward individually with you, later sometime. Thanks, Subhashri, and the attendees for joining us in this session. All the best for the future. I'm really looking forward to your work, and catch you again sometimes at the movies then. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Namrata, and to Wanfrang and Naro, Rajni, Hobam, and Bhaskar, who's had to leave. I mean, I think personally for me, this conversation has been very enriching because there has been discussion on the idea of identity in terms of space, in terms of culture, but yet cinema as something that can be located in a context and yet have a universal way in which it speaks. And I think personally for me, for somebody who's ethnically a South Indian, who has lived her whole adult life in Delhi and makes work in the Northeast and specifically Assam, I've found a lot of succor in this discussion. So let us all travel, let us all make films in the way we want to, in the forms we want to, and keep just making. So thank you all for this conversation, and to those who joined us, not just on Zoom, but YouTube and Facebook as well. We will see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. where German filmmaker Philipp Major, who's the director of A World Taxi, will be in conversation with filmmaker Shabani Hassanwalia. And do register if you haven't already at IIHSurbanlens.in to watch the films. The film festival is on until the 6th of December. See you. Bye-bye.